Hi, welcome to Intervino. I'm Cyrus Jahardeh, and today we're going to be looking at the differences between Prosecco and Champagne, between sparkling wine, Prosecco and Champagne. People very often ask me which is the best, what's the difference, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at in this short video. Prosecco, sparkling wine, champagne, what's the difference between them all? Is there one that's better than the other? It's exactly the question that we're going to be answering. So, first of all, let me tell you that it all falls under one category, which is the category of sparkling wines. What then changes is how the wine is made and where it comes from. So, there are two main methods to produce quality sparkling wines. One is called the traditional method, and that is the method that is used to produce champagne. It used to be called the Champenois method, but Champagne has ruled against that, and it can't be called the Champenois method anymore. And the other method is what we call the tank method. Nothing to do with those army vehicles, but it's a vessel, as in tank, as in a vat. So the main difference between the traditional method and the tank method is where the bubbles come up. So just in case you don't know how bubbles happen in sparkling wines, let me explain. To produce a white wine, which is what you need in the beginning, we're going to take grapes, we're going to crush them, we're going to throw away the grapes. We have a juice. That juice contains sugar. Yeasts are added or are naturally occurring to the liquid. They're going to start eating the sugar. And these yeasts, by eating the sugar, are going to turn it into alcohol. And as a byproduct, we have CO2, carbon dioxide. So what happens? They eat the sugar, turn it into alcohol, carbon dioxide, and goes into the air, and then you've got a wine. So how do we add bubbles? And there is no addition of bubbles through any weird mechanism. What we're going to use is a second fermentation. So you remember I told you we're going to create a fermentation by having yeast eat sugar, and what we're going to do is add to this liquid a solution, a liqueur made of sugar and yeasts, which is going to be added. And what's going to happen? The yeast is going to eat the sugar, turn it into alcohol, and as a byproduct, we have CO2. What we're going to do before that starts happening, we're going to add liquid. We're going to version 1, the possibility number 1 with the traditional method, we're going to put this liquid in a bottle, which we're going to close, and the yeast is going to eat the sugar, turn it into alcohol. That's going to create CO2. And if you remember from your school days, CO2 that's pressured in a liquid is going to be absorbed by the liquid. And what we have is a sparkling wine. The bubbles are going to be in there. And that is the traditional method. We've got champagne. If it comes from champagne, if it doesn't come from champagne, it can't be called champagne. It just can't be called from champagne. I know there are wines produced elsewhere throughout the world that are called champagne, but they're not champagne. If it's not from the region of Champagne, which is in France, around the city of Reims, it can't be called champagne. It's sparkling wine, okay? It doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's not champagne. It's a traditional method sparkling wines, and there's some magnificent traditional method sparkling wines around the world. We'll do a video about that someday. But first, let's have a look at this other method, the tank method. Instead of, when we're adding the liquid for the second fermentation, the mix of sugar and yeasts, instead of putting that in a bottle, we're going to put that in a tank, larger volume. We're going to seal that tank, and just in the same way, a second fermentation started in the bottle and produced bubbles. This is going to happen in the tank, and the fact that it's sealed means that the CO2 is going to go, create a pressure. That pressure is going to get the CO2 gas absorbed by the liquid, and then the wine is going to be bottled as a sparkling wine. Two different methods, This tank method, if the wine comes and is produced with Glera grape and comes from the region of Valdobbiadene and Conegliano, it'll be a Prosecco di Valdobbiadene Conegliano. Otherwise, it can also be called a Prosecco, but it's going to have to come from Italy to be called a Prosecco. But what changes is the process. Okay, so just to sum it up, on one side we have the traditional method, the other side we've got the tank method, also called in Italy the Charmat method, also in France called the Charmat method. So tank method, Charmat method is what's used to produce both Cava and Prosecco. On the other side we've got traditional method used to produce champagne as well as many other sparkling wines. What's better? That is for you to judge. It's a question of preferences. I'll leave it to you to judge, but that was to answer the many questions we've had on what are the main differences between champagne and Prosecco and other sparkling wines. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing you in one of our next videos, and until then, santé!